I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 91. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of the Velocity Work Podcast. I am really excited to bring you what we're going to share with you today. I'm recording this on a Saturday morning. I normally don't work too much on weekends at this stage of the game, but we are leaving on vacation tomorrow. There's two reasons I'm doing this on a Saturday. One, we're leaving on vacation tomorrow. So I'm buttoning things up, getting a couple things done so that I can really check out next week. And then the other reason I'm recording this on a Saturday is because we just finished the April sprint yesterday on the 30th of April. And so now I have everyone's lessons and I can share them with you. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we dig in, I need to make sure that you guys know about this. I am teaching a class coming up on May 11th. And listen, I have been teaching classes for the last year, and I've been getting clearer and clearer and clearer in the last year, and better and better and better and more dialed in with the content in the last year. And I have got to tell you, this class that I'm going to be teaching on the 11th is going to be the best I've ever taught. And the reason I know that is because of how dialed in and how deep I can go on certain concepts in the class that's going to let you really walk away and be able to implement. And I've just gotten deeper. I've just gotten better. The visuals are better. The questions that I'm asking you are better. The concepts are tighter. It's just a different game at this point. Practice makes perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I still have more practice to do. And I'll keep evolving with this, but this is going to be the best one that I've done for sure. So I really want to encourage you to come. It's May 11th. If you go to velocitywork.com, you will see a button there that says free masterclass. That will let you register. And I highly recommend that you do so. I would love to have a room full, and by virtual room, right? But a room full of you to share this stuff with. What I'm going to be sharing is the difference maker with you and how you progress, with you and the results that you create. As a law firm owner, you have to wear different hats. You have a lot of different struggles. And I'm so tuned into that at this point. And I've gotten so clear about what works and what doesn't work for law firm owners. And not tactics, but principles that you've got to think about and you have to apply. You have to really use to your advantage. And most people aren't. So you're operating at a disadvantage. I'm trying to get law firm owners to operate with an advantage that they haven't been operating with. Now, if you're a client, you don't need to come to this. You're immersed and steeped in the things that I'm going to be teaching. But if you're not a client or a member of Mastery Group, you should come. There's no reason. This is free content and it's the best that I've got so far. It's the best that I've delivered. So don't miss it. I highly encourage you to come to the class on May 11th. It is called how to focus on what matters most to your firm without letting things fall through the cracks. And it's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited. The presentation we have put together, I've given a ton of thought and work and that I've put into this. And I don't say that like my effort shouldn't matter to you necessarily, but I'm saying that so that you understand, even at this point with how deeply I understand things, I'm finding new and better ways to convey it and new and better ways to get it into your hands so that you can actually make headway with it. So come to class. You won't be sorry. All right. Well, let's dig into today's. So April sprint is over and I have lessons to share with you from your fellow law firm owners that have been through the April sprint. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to break it up into categories of aiming, like what you're aiming for and having clarity around what you're aiming for. That's something really important inside of Velocity Work we focus on. So there's a handful of lessons around that. Planning, making a well thought out, deliberate plan. And there's a lot of lessons around that were takeaways for people. And then also honoring your plan. There's a lot of lessons around that and execution, essentially. And then there's a handful of lessons that were just kind of extraneous, but felt like you guys would want to hear them. You will soak them up. They're principle-based and they don't necessarily fall under aiming for something specific or making a plan or honoring your plan, but it's something else that's really important that is an undercurrent to everything for these participants. So I'm going to share those with you. And then the last ones I'm going to share with you are the last lessons that they give at the end of every month. I chose some of those to share with you that I knew you wouldn't need context for. It would just land. The last day of the month, they give an overarching lesson for the month that they've just experienced. So I'll save those for the end to share with you. So today we're going to start with what you're aiming for and having clarity around that. There's a handful of lessons there I'm going to share. We'll do those first, and then we're going to move into planning. Now, there's a lot of lessons around planning that law firm owners had in this sprint. So I am just going to go for a set number of minutes, like 35 minutes is probably the max that I'll go for. And we'll find a good stopping point, and then I'll pick up where I left off next time, because I want to be cognizant that I don't want to speed through these because it takes away from the lessons. You have to digest these things. So I don't want to speed through them. So we're just going to go until I'm going to keep my eye on the clock, and we're going to find a good stopping point. If we get through all of the planning lessons, that's great. And if we don't, no sweat. We'll pick up at the next episode. Okay, so let's start with the lessons around aiming, knowing exactly what you're aiming for. Okay, the first one. Make a decision and act on it. Because it doesn't matter how many times you run a scenario on paper or in your head. If you don't make a decision to act and then actually take action, you'll never be able to know if the metrics or scenarios you've run will work. I liked this because this came from a participant who is a self-proclaimed fact finder. She has basically said, I like facts, a lot of facts, and I can stay in the research mode. I can play out different scenarios. But for her, what she realized, and a big takeaway for her, was you just have to make a decision and go, because you don't ever know anything and you don't make headway on anything. You don't produce any results if you stay here. So I thought I would share that with you for those of you who can relate, where it's so easy to stay in research mode and playing scenarios out and sort of the pre-decision stage. All right, next one. There's a powerful difference between commitment to a goal and attachment to a goal. Oh my gosh, I love this lesson. I like this because it's so important to set a goal. You have to know what you're aiming for. It has to be very specific. There's a target, right? But having a commitment to reaching that goal is very different than being attached to it. When you're attached to it, you're usually in a hurry towards it. And it's almost like you're less thoughtful. You're just running towards the goal. And if you don't hit it, especially in the time frame that you thought you would, it's so deflating. Where if you just have a hard commitment, it doesn't freaking matter. It's like, okay, I'm going to do what I think I need to do to get to this goal. Oh, that didn't work. No biggie. I'm going to try something different. No biggie. I'm going to try something different every time you kind of fall off track. When we're trying to create new results or hit goals we've never hit before, you're in territory that's unfamiliar. So it's not going to be a linear path. And when people kind of have those dips or those valleys in their journey towards what they said they were going to do, towards the goal, you can get thrown off or get deflated if you're very attached to the goal. It's a different vibe that you're bringing to it. So I love this. There's a powerful difference between commitment to a goal and attachment to a goal. When you believe in a goal or a concept or an idea with totality, you will make it happen, and you can bend the reality of people around you to make it happen. It's almost, this goes perfectly with the one I just mentioned before, because it's like you are committed to that goal no matter what. You believe that it will be achieved. And when you believe that hard in your goal, you'll make it happen. And you can start to get the people around you who might not believe as hard as you, they start to believe in that goal as well because of how hard you believe. So you could start to bend their perspective, their reality that they're facing because of the influence that you have when you believe in it so hard. Loved that. Okay, going to the next one. I'm actually in the tracker where we keep track of these, and I have them color coded, so I just have to find the right color that goes with AIM. Here we go. Action alone isn't enough. You need clarity before the action. Having clarity leads to a calm satisfaction instead of the usual overwhelm. I like this. And the reason I put this in the aiming section is because you need clarity before the action. That is true. And if you don't know exactly what you're shooting for, and I could have put this in planning too, because you have to have clarity about what the steps that you're planning to take. But having clarity is so important before you start taking action. So the lesson again is action alone isn't enough. You need clarity before the action. Having clarity leads to calm satisfaction instead of the usual overwhelm. Now, this is not to say that you don't have to have clarity before you take action, but there is a difference. Like if you can have clarity, if you just sat down and gave it some thought and you could figure out the plan, break down a project, for example, that creates a lot of clarity in the steps that you're going to take, then you should get clarity around what you're going to do before you start doing it. But sometimes there's things where you don't know exactly what to do. Like you kind of know the next step and that's all you can see in front of you. Then sometimes just taking the action will lead to clarity. But we undermine our ability to move efficiently and with flow through something when we do know the steps. We just didn't do the work. We didn't sit down and think through it. We didn't try at all to do that. And then you start taking action. It's like this unnecessary messiness to it all, chaos to it all. Sometimes you're not going to know the next steps. And your job is to just put one foot in front of the next. And so that can feel messier. But what this person is referring to is, you know what in the hell to do. It's not about like, I don't know. We do know. And if you get clarity before you just start running towards the thing, you will, it leads to calm satisfaction and you won't have that typical overwhelm that you normally feel. To make the most of my time, I need to focus on the most important things instead of everything. The reason I put this in AIM is because people usually don't constrain themselves down to pick what's the most important thing. They are trying to go after many different results at once, and it waters everything down, and they usually fall short. So that's why this is in the AIM section. To make the most of my time, I need to focus on the most important things instead of everything. All right, we are going to move to the planning section of the April Sprint lessons learned. Keep disciplined in the brain dump instead of diving into the actual tasks, because you actually don't get as much done when you dive in because you're operating without a plan. Okay, now this is going back to Monday Map. I teach Monday Map. It's a process. You can get access to it on my site. It's a process to plan your week like a pro, truly. And then you have to honor your plan, right? Well, when he is sitting down, this participant, he's saying, I'm sitting down, I'm doing my brain dump, and I'm putting things down. I'm like, I could just knock that out right now. I could just get started on that right now. And there is an urge to kind of abandon his plan so that he could just go do the thing. And so what he's saying is keep disciplined in the brain dump instead of diving into the actual tasks, because you actually don't get as much done when you dive in because you're operating without a plan. So the whole point here is a plan is essential if you want to operate efficiently. Ooh, this next one is specific. And there were a few of these this month, which I loved. And I'll explain why. Anytime there is a hearing being scheduled, simultaneously book appropriate recovery time. There's others you're going to hear that are to do with this. And I love these lessons because now that the world is waking back up after COVID and things are starting to happen and this is something they're having to re-engage with more of the time, is dealing with hearings and appearances and et cetera, et cetera. And all the prep that you have to do for something like that, what people don't normally do is give themselves space to recover afterwards or to give themselves space just to breathe for a bit. And so there were 3 different people, I think, if I remember right, 3 different lessons I'm going to share with you today that are very similar to this. So I wanted to include them all so that you all are thinking about that. Where are you preparing for such a big deal in your world? And then you're expecting yourself to jump right back into life right after, like literally right afterwards. And do you really want to do it that way? Or should you maybe set things up differently for yourself? So I love this lesson. Don't disregard the assessment of the time required to complete the task because otherwise you'll experience overwhelm. This is a step that people skip all the time and they act like it's no big deal. But it's a step in the process of Monday Map for a reason. Once next to each task that you have written down, before you schedule it, you have to write down how many minutes you need to get that thing done. And people skip that step because it seems so insignificant, but it is a difference maker when you're calendaring, you know exactly how much time to calendar instead of bloating your events or cutting them short. So don't disregard the assessment of the time required to complete the task because otherwise you're going to experience overwhelm. Good stuff. Okay, this one's funny. There's a quote. I don't even know where this quote came from, but the participant quoted, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." And so then he followed it up with, "Properly planning prevents punching yourself in the mouth." Isn't that good? Remember to build in transition time. I can't go from going 60 miles an hour on one thing to full speed ahead on another. I need ramp up time. This is wise. This is something that, they're learning for themselves as they go through their week. They kind of had like full steam ahead, one activity, back to back with full steam ahead, another activity. And it wasn't realistic because they needed a bit of transition time. So that's a great lesson I think we should all consider when we are looking at our calendars to keep them as realistic as possible. When a day feels chaotic, I'm going from one thing to another without any breaks or overwhelming. That's not an excuse for not being productive. Rather, it means that I didn't plan well enough or I'm just not following my plan well enough. I'm going to read that again. When a day feels chaotic, like I'm going from one thing to another without any breaks, or just overwhelming, that's not an excuse for not being productive. Rather, it means I didn't plan well enough, or I didn't follow my plan well enough. Truth. This next one, I remember when the person said it, just the delight that was on their face when they said this one. Maybe it all does fit and it doesn't have to be such a rat race. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Isn't that good? I know that's a quote. That last one is a quote. But that for her realization of like, oh no, everything that I really want to make headway on, it does fit. It does not have to be a rat race. That belief that she now has because of the practice that she's been putting in, that's priceless. That is something that makes someone unstoppable. Having a plan makes it so that you don't have to think so much all of the time. Yep. Because then you just execute, right? Be realistic when it comes to projects or tasks that involve other people. I need to build in a buffer when other people are involved. Yeah, that's true. And this is a lesson it's a really common one that people come to is they put things on their calendar like they're going to call so-and-so. Well, do you have an appointment with so-and-so or you're just going to call them? Like, what if they're not there? And then they're going to have to call you back. So one of the things, and I may have put this lesson in here, I can't remember, but I'll say it now just in case. But one of the things you have to remember is that you want to keep things as predictable as possible on your calendar. So set an appointment. Then you can bank on talking to that person at that time instead. So that's one example. But when you're working on some projects with other people, you have to give some buffer time because you aren't in total control of them and you don't really know how this is going to go. So giving buffer time when it comes to projects or tasks that involve other people, that's so good. The most important thing to determine is what is important and what isn't. Yes. And that was followed up with this lesson. Figuring out what's essential is hard, but it's vital. When things feel overwhelming or I don't know where to start, break it down. And if I still don't know, break it down more. This is great. This is like a no excuses approach. Like if you're feeling overwhelming about something and you don't know where to start with something, either or, you just need to break down the steps and then your brain doesn't have to think about where to start. You just mapped it out. You know exactly where to start. And so I love this because it's like, okay, that's what I need to do. And if I still don't know, it's not broken down small enough. I need to break it down more. Make distractions as hard as possible and make priorities as easy as possible. This was, making distractions as hard as possible. So this person, I forget what the term is on his phone, but like he can offload apps from his phone in your settings, apparently, on an iPhone. You could basically say like, I don't want to see this on my phone, but it doesn't delete all your data. It's not really erasing the app. So that was an example of how to make a distraction hard. So he doesn't just open up apps that he's going to spend some mindless time in, but then also making priorities as easy as possible. You know, he keeps his gym bag in his car. And he was like, no, I just bring it inside with like his running clothes. I just bring it inside with me in the morning. It's right there. It just makes it easier for me to be able to change and go instead of having to go to my car to get the clothes and then put them on. So make distractions as hard as possible and make priorities as easy as possible. A man's got to, this is another quote that this is in quotation marks. A man's got to know his limitations. And then it's followed up with recognize that stress takes a toll and that I need to plan a period of rest after big projects. This is the same thing that we were talking about with the hearing lesson earlier. Same idea here. I have to be more ruthless in my scheduling and looking down the road at what follow-up stuff will be needed. This, especially with client work, if you put something on your calendar, there's, something specific, a deliverable for the client. What else is coming? Like what other deliverables are you going to have to do after that step, right? Go ahead and timeline that stuff out so that it's not a surprise and it doesn't feel like, when you sit down to plan your week 4 weeks out from now and you could have already had that on the calendar to take care of for the client, but you didn't. So now you have to give more thought to it and brain power, and you need to remember it, and you need to find time for it. You could have done all that when it was fresh on your brain. I have to be more ruthless about scheduling and looking down the road at what follow-up stuff will be needed. There's never enough time to do everything, but when I plan, there's absolutely enough time for the important things. There's never enough time to do everything, but when I plan, there's absolutely enough time for the important things. This goes back to the lesson that maybe it does all fit and it doesn't have to be such a rat race. It's the same idea, same lessons of being learned, just different ways of saying it. Okay, next up, planned execution drives productivity. It's just said well in a nutshell. Add buffer time for unplanned things because it gives you the opportunity to get things done that you did not plan for and to complete the things that you did plan for. This is great. And if you have not gone to download and learn Monday Map, Friday Wrap, which is a process that all my clients abide by or practice as they're working towards the growth of their firms, Go to velocitywork.com. You'll see a pop-up that lets you download that thing for free. Do it, because they're all referring to this. Add more buffer time because you can stay on track with the tasks you have to do. This was a back-to-back lesson for this participant. So add buffer time for unplanned things, meaning as an attorney, there's going to be stuff that pops up that you didn't anticipate. I'm not talking emergencies. I just mean things to do, new things to get added to your quote unquote task list. So put in calendar time so that you have space for those inevitable things. And then that way it doesn't throw off your plan when those things happen. So that's what she's referring to here. Nothing goes on my calendar unless I can bank on it. This goes back to the same, this lesson about, don't put time on your calendar to talk to someone, like give them a call. If you don't have an appointment, like if you don't know that you're going to be talking to them in that hour, do not put it on your calendar. Your calendar needs to be as certain as it possibly can be. So if you need to talk to somebody that week, set an appointment so that you can bank on what's going on your calendar. Intentionally planning and calendaring gives you peace of mind. By putting something in the calendar, you give it life. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. I love how she says, by putting something on the calendar, you give it life. When it's on a to-do list, it's just this dormant task that who knows when in the hell you'll get to it, right? But when you put it on the calendar, it gives it life. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. It's okay to rearrange the specific timing of the tasks, so long as you make those decisions ahead of time. Yes. The whole thing about you staying in control is making decisions ahead of time and then following through with those decisions. And people get really reactive through their week. This is a way, but basically she's saying, don't be reactive. Like if you need to rearrange some things, that's okay. But do it from a place where you're actually rearranging, you're making those decisions ahead of time, and then you can sink back into the tasks. Be okay with rescheduling things that aren't critical to make room for the critical things. Critical or important things. Monday mapping gives me a feeling of fulfillment because I have intentional control and it allows me to do all the things I say I want to do. So true. When you schedule mediation, don't schedule anything else for that day. Yep, this is another one. Same examples I was mentioning earlier. I love that. I mean, the fact that 3 different people had that lesson in this sprint it's like, okay, this is good. This is really good. This is where people are starting to figure out what they need in order to set themselves up for success. And how can they be as realistic as possible to make as much headway as possible and feel a sense of ease and flow in their schedules? Because we kill ourselves by not preparing in this way. And that's what happened. All 3 people who had this lesson, it's because they went through the pain of not actually scheduling recovery time after a big event, essentially, that they were preparing for. All right, that is all of the planning lessons. We did get through them. That is awesome. So we got through all the aiming lessons and all the planning lessons. And next week, you will be hearing about all of the lessons when it comes to actually honoring your plan or the execution phase of getting things done, taking action. So we will dive into those. And then I'm going to give you the extras as well, the stuff that I think you really want to hear from them that didn't fall into one of those previous categories, but so good. And you guys will be able to soak it up. And then we'll give you the last lessons learned from the month from participants. All right, everybody, have such a beautiful week. Join me in that class. Go to velocitywork.com and sign up for the free masterclass. You won't be sorry. If you're a client, you're good. If you aren't a client, don't waste this opportunity to learn because I've got it better than I've ever had it before for you. I've got it more digestible, just more easy for you to walk away and actually get this stuff accomplished in your own world. Okay, I'll see you next Tuesday in class. Come to class. And The next podcast will drop next week as well. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.